Hello, Titans fans, and welcome to another edition of the Two-Tone Crew. This is episode 82, and I am one of your hosts, John Boy. Joining me tonight to wrap up Week 3 of the NFL season, we've got a number of guests with us tonight back, and the voice has returned. Jamal, feeling better this week?
I'm feeling better. I'm especially excited that I got the pick last week right.
Did you?
That's right.
Yeah.
The Titans, the
Sure.
Bengals.
The Titans, Bengals, Titans.
Titans, Bengals. I couldn't get it wrong, baby.
That second voice you hear is, of course, Josh. Welcome back.
Hey guys, yeah, it's been a couple weeks. Been a couple of bad weeks, so I had to come back.
Yeah. And also making his return to the Two-Tone Crew, he's been on, I guess it was a while back now, Mercalius. We call him Luke on the podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you. And, of course, we are the official podcast of TitansReport.com. And Week 3 of the NFL season is in the books, and it will likely be marked as the week that everyone abandoned ship on the Jake Locker bandwagon. They'd kind of been trickling off for, a little over a year now, and judging from a thread on Titans Report, Josh started a poll, and we never agree on anything on that website except for this. What was the final tally, Josh?
It was 92-0, and as someone pointed out that if we had a poll between eating ice cream or I believe it was cat feces, that it wouldn't have been that lopsided.
What kind of toppings would be on the cat feces?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Right.
What kind of ice cream?
I don't know, man. This will be better than Jake Locker's game.
So for a 1-2 team, guys, we have surprisingly a great number of topics to cover, and one thing I want to go ahead and address here first is a bit of very sad, very unfortunate news, and that was, of course, the death of longtime Titans kicker Rob Bironas, which happened late Saturday evening, and most of us, I think, found out early Sunday morning. Players found out early Sunday morning, had to go play a game. And if you've been following this story, there are a number of allegations and just very disturbing things that have come out about this story, and I don't know that we need to spend time on any of that, but regardless of how this ends up, it's just a very tragic situation, regardless of what they find out. But he was a longtime fan favorite, had been with the team for a number of years, and just had a lot of great kicks that folks really remember. So our thoughts are definitely with his family and friends right now, and I don't know if you guys had anything to add or not. But for me, that memory of the Colts, the 60-yard field goal, I don't know that I'll ever forget that. It was just an incredible kick to win the game for the Titans. But
Well, and the call on it was really good. They played that, I think it was Monday, on 104.5, and they played the actual call audio. And it was like chills, even just listening to it, because it was just so hard to believe. And I remember the excitement of that time. And unfortunately, the excitement was kind of a peak, and then we went back into a valley. But very, very exciting kick. And I mean, then you have the game where he kicked 11 billion field goals to beat Houston as well.
NFL record, yep.
I
That's right.
almost broke the table in my living room during that game. Every time he would go for a field goal, I'd start tapping my table, and as the game went on, it got faster and faster and faster. In the last one where he hit the game winner, I think I almost broke my hand. But
So, true or false, you had more beers down than field goals by that time?
no, not quite. I believe I was relatively sober at that point.
Oh, okay.
Just an exciting game to watch.
So yeah, moving on from that, really, there's not a great transition to end that on. But unfortunately, the Titans did still have to go out and play a game. I know many of their thoughts, of course, were with Bironas and the family. But it's not an excuse. They came out and virtually laid an egg. I mean, 33-7 was the final score in Cincinnati. And if you just looked at this score, you would probably think that the Titans were dominated from the start, and there was certainly a point when the Bengals took over, but it wasn't quite, what it seemed. Titans missed 2 field goals. They had a lot of penalties. Jamal, I think you were just reviewing the first drive. I mean, the Titans came out, had a decent drive. There were still inaccurate throws, which we'll talk a great deal about here in a bit. But they were throws that were catchable at least, and the Titans moved the ball, stalled. They got into field goal range, and our new kicker, Ryan Suckup, who has been just incredibly accurate the first 2 weeks of the season, missed one wide right, and then he ended up missing another one right as well. So just not a good day at all for him. And I think even during the game they said the Bengals hadn't given up any first quarter points. And so the Titans went right down their first drive in great position for a field goal, and they missed it. And really that kind of set the tone for the whole game, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the unfortunate thing about that was not only did they miss it, but they had the penalty shortly before that. That is one of the reasons why why they ended up being in a little bit worse situation for the field goal. I think it would be a little bit more automatic without that penalty for the false start. And just really that drive, it was interesting because they started out trying to run the ball. The reason I went back to watch it is because I was trying to remember there was so much talk during the week about after Locker's pretty bad performance in week 2, they were saying, he's a rhythm quarterback. You have to get him started with some easy throws, get him some of those throws at the beginning. And I thought, okay, well, let's go see if they tried to do that. And really, they didn't. They ran to start the game. Although I think maybe the first play might have been an audible by Locker. It's hard to tell those sorts of things just watching it. But then he had the long run, and then he had a pass that was really high for right. He had the one really good passing play I thought was the one to Delaney Walker, who had some good after the catch on it. But I mean, beyond that, it was really just the really long run by Locker was most of the drive.
Yep.
But regardless, they got down into field goal range, and like you said, they missed it. The whole first half, I think we outgained them in the first half. But the thing about football is you don't get points for the yards you gain in the middle. You only get points for the yards right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And the Titans messed up. They messed up at the end. At the end of the first half, Jake Locker threw that, I guess I'll call it an obnoxious interception.
Oh, my gosh.
And he also had the other interception that basically set the Bengals up for a short field and an easy touchdown. So, I mean, between all of that, we gave them easy points and we took points away from ourselves, and it was a 19-0 contest at halftime. But really, I mean, the play on the field, apart from the scoring opportunities, was a lot more even than that.
Oh, yeah. Actually, if you look at the total stats for the game, we got 326 yards to their 300. We outrushed them 149 to their 116. But if you look at the important stats, our third down conversions, we got 2 of 12.
Oh, man.
To their 3 of 9, and then on penalties, we ended up biting ourselves in the foot with that. It was 11 for 99 on our end versus their 50 yards worth of penalties. So it was just we could move the ball, not at will, but like he said, we were driving the field multiple times. We just couldn't do anything with it, and when we got close, we were shooting ourselves.
Yep. And the defense, you mentioned them a little bit there, Jamal. Cincinnati didn't score. They got their first field goal with 4:48 left in the first, and that made it 3-0. And then they got their touchdown right to close out the first quarter on one of the most I don't know, man, I don't know if I've ever been so angry at watching a play happen and then the result, because Wiz said after the game they practiced it. It was clear Ray Wilson knew exactly where they were going with the ball, and of course I'm talking about the Mohamed Sanu pass to Andy Dalton. I mean, the Titans played it, just how they were supposed to. Bleedy was right in position, and I don't know if anyone asked him. I've not seen any quotes from him exactly what he was thinking there, because it looked like he couldn't decide whether he wanted to go for a pick or wanted to hit it, and he ended up doing nothing and just kind of looking very foolish as Andy Dalton, yes, the quarterback, ran past him for a touchdown. And, of course, it's been on the highlight plays all week. That should have been a highlight play the other way.
I think I really think that play is kind of a microcosm of what we've seen, the last two games.
Yeah.
Something that the coaching staff has written up, we've practiced for, we've prepared for it, and the play is there to be made. It's just our players are failing to execute.
That's a great point. So it frustrated me to no end to see that play. I don't know how it made you guys feel. But I don't care if you go for the pick. I don't care if you just level the guy. But it's a free shot at the quarterback. I mean, just if you can't get the interception, just knock him out. I mean, come on.
Kill the head. Kill the head. Kill the head. What?
That's what last year's defensive coordinator would have said.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, when we threw that, because that was the play, it was like the first play right after the interception, right? I think it was.
I can't. Well, it says that drive was 5 plays, 73 yards. So
the answer is no. That's not the case. No, this whole game, I had such a hard time watching it to the point where, I was with people. It was kind of funny. I was at a friend's house and they were watching the Packers game. The Packers ended up losing and they didn't have a good game. The whole game, every time they got mad, I'd ask them what the score was and they were down by like 5. It's like, screw you, shut up. You guys aren't. This is a game that gets you angry.
Yeah. Yep. And, I mean, it was just, we touched on the penalties already. That's been a resounding theme throughout all 3 weeks. And Ken Wisenhunt's taken the blame for that. Said it's a reflection on him. They've got to cut them out. Probably the most obvious one, to fans anyway, was the holding on the punt, which got the Bengals a safety, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So that put them up 12-0. And then before the half, they ended up going up 19-0. And from there, the Titans really just totally imploded. I mean, the defense did a great job right there before half. Casey got the pressure. They forced Dalton into just a really boneheaded interception. So you were basically gifted something right there. And then Locker just makes an inexcusable throw that, in that situation, a fourth-year guy just cannot make that throw.
Can we talk about the responses the players had to that throw? Because it wasn't even just the throw. The throw was like, oh, that was a terrible decision. But his explanation for the throw just made me want to strangle someone. I could not. You can't, as a quarterback, make a really, really bad decision like that and say, well, I thought he was open. And then when somebody says, when did you realize he wasn't open? And you say, when they intercepted the ball. It's like, okay, so you had no feeling for that. You had no awareness, nothing. I mean, you were just completely shocked that they intercepted that.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Kowarski hit him pretty hard on that, too.
Nate Washington said he didn't even think that Locker passed him the ball. He thought there must have been another player that was the intended target. It's like, this is a fourth-year guy. I mean, if nothing else, don't answer that way. Even if it's true, don't say that.
If it's anybody besides Locker, you probably assume that he's just being a little smart with the question. But
right.
Locker's been very candid throughout his career, so I kind of believe him that that's really how he felt. How about you, Luke?
It was a terrible, terrible throw. It was an awful decision, and I mean, I'm not going to go off too much on a tangent here, but this is the first game I can recall watching where there wasn't any joy, even at the beginning of the kickoff. Maybe it was the Baronis news, to set things off, but I was more watching this game expecting and waiting for the Locker mistakes.
I felt the exact same way.
And instead of looking forward to a big play or even really hoping for a big play, I knew something bad was going to happen. But even with that mindset, when he threw into that coverage after rolling out of the pocket, that's normally where he shines, is on the move, running towards the sideline. And, mechanically, it was a great throw. It looked pretty. It got there pretty quick. But there were 5,000 people there and Nate Washington. And on the replay, I have no idea. You can't justify making a throw like that.
I want to ask you this, Jamal, because of all of us on the show tonight, I think you were probably the one to get off the bandwagon the earliest. I was
the early adopter, yeah.
Yeah. Would you agree though that Jake looks worse now than he has ever looked? Because to me, I think
yeah, but they have. So here's the thing: they haven't playing in a real NFL offense. That's the thing. Last year and in previous years, they would have tried to tailor the offense to him, and now he's in a situation where I don't think. We talked about it with Josh Gunnels. I think it was last week, maybe the week before. I think it's going to be a trend in general with Ken Whisenhunt. He's going to expect you to go out and execute what he thinks is a good idea. And I think in the past they would have said, we have a system that's a good idea, but what resources do we have? Let's tailor it to those resources. They're not doing that. It's pass or fail with Locker. So he does look worse. And I think that these last two games are not what his average would be. Let's say he starts the whole season. I think if you took his average game, these have to be worse than the average would be.
You would hope.
But at the same time, I mean, it's not that surprising to me to a certain extent because he's in a real offense this time.
Yeah, I don't know what's worse. Like when he looks bad in a very bad pedestrian offense versus looking bad in this offense where by my count, just going off the top of my head, he's missed at minimum 3 touchdowns. If he just sees the guy and makes the proper throw, some of them he has seen them. He's just thrown terrible balls. And seeing him miss wide open receivers who would walk into the end zone, it's crushing to watch that. And I agree. I don't think Jake has ever looked as bad as he has trying to run an actual NFL offense. And the sad part is he seems to be, for the most part, making the right reads. I know that interception in the end zone was terrible, but the overthrows to guys, it's like he's dissecting the coverage, what you'd want a quarterback to do. It's just he's not capitalizing. He's not doing what anyone in his position should be expected to do.
I mean, hitting a guy in stride is far more the exception nowadays. It's just mind-boggling to me. Even the completions, and we gave him a pass in week 1 because for the most part they were still catchable, even though they were off target. But now he's having those, and then he's having them mixed in with these just ridiculous throws like the one to Nate Washington and other throws that are just way off the mark. It's just when you see him hit a guy in stride, it's like, whoa, wait, he hit a guy in stride, and that, man, it's not a recipe for success in the NFL at all. It's very disheartening because, I think all of us did have high hopes, at least at some point last year, that he could get it together, and now we're 3 games in, and like we said toward the opening, I don't know that there's really anyone left who has that much confidence in him. And even if you did have confidence that he could still turn it around, guess what, guys? He's hurt yet again. a whole week early this year.
That's the thing. I don't see it. There are actually way more people who still back Jake Locker, than we like to think. Because on our board, everybody's kind of over it. I think personally we're probably more ahead of the curve here. But if you look at his stats, what has he done to deserve all this loyalty? The guy's thrown for over 2,000 yards once. He has never stayed healthy. Look at his games played. The first year, obviously, that's not on him. But second year, 11, then 7. Then he's on the third game. He's hurt again this year. He's thrown for 10 touchdowns one time, and he threw for 11 interceptions that year. What has he done? He shows you flashes every once in a while.
Yep.
That's not enough. Every quarterback is going to flash.
Yeah.
I broke it down on another board. I believe someone.
Wait, what? Wait,
another
stop.
board? What's this?
Well, I kind of got into
somebody hang up
/ argument with them, so I kind of needed to spell it out. And someone did it on Titans Report. I kind of milked a lot of their work with it. Locker's really only had 4 above average to good games since he's been a starter in the NFL, and even some of those are debatable. And everyone cites his injury issues. The people still supporting him are saying it's too early to judge. He hasn't played enough games. He's played plenty of games. Even with all of his injuries, he's approaching 30 starts. he's had 4 good games out of the 20-something plus that he started. That's an 80% bad game percentage for every good game. I mean, how can you hang your hat on him looking good when the evidence for him just looking terrible overrides it so much? And I supported him for a while. I was a big advocate of his, and give him time. He's flashed. He's shown some potential. You just rationally can't do it anymore. And this season he's looked the worst he's ever looked.
Yep. I'm right there with you. With you on all that.
I think it might have been, I want to say maybe Sign 09.
I think it was Sign who posted the game breakdown.
Yeah, because it was somebody, so it might have been another poster who said Locker's had more good games than bad. And I asked the question, how many good games do you think he's had, and which ones?
It's not even close.
And so somebody went through and they said, actually, now that I look at it this way, like, it's pretty terrible. And it's true. I mean, even if you didn't go by like the good-bad rate, how many times has the guy had more than 2 touchdowns? How many times has the guy passed for more than 300 yards? And you said earlier, and this is something that I think you are not alone on, but you said, one of the things Locker's good at is getting outside the pocket. He's worse outside the pocket. In the pocket, he has an 81 passer rating. Outside the pocket, 67.8. Like, the strengths that people think he has aren't really strengths if you just step back and look at them. It's crazy. His QBR outside the pocket is 39.5. I don't know enough about the QBR because I hate the stat to really tell you how bad that is, but I know it's bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, judging what we've seen so far, what we know about his entire career, I honestly don't see how anyone could look you in the face and reasonably say that they believe he'll be able to do something in the final 13 games to earn a long-term deal. I don't see how anyone could reasonably say that. I mean, if the guy woke up and turned into Peyton Manning, maybe, but the odds of that we know are incredibly low because of what we've seen. And let's just say these last 2 games weren't so bad. Let's say he looked decent in all 3. Then he got the injury. I mean, then you're right back where last year, he showed those flashes, and then he was injured, and he missed so many games. And I held out hope throughout the off season, and then just seeing how he started this season, I mean, it's very disheartening. And the fact that Mettenberger looked so, at least, definitely showed good potential, regardless of if you want to say he looked good or not. He definitely showed potential. I think that's kind of, in people's minds, that's speeding up the process and the hope that the Titans will move on. But I mean, me personally, I just don't see any way that Jake's going to be back on this team.
One of the big arguments people use is, the backups could be worse. As bad as Locker has looked, the backups could come in and sneak up the joint even worse. I don't think that's possible.
33-7.
Well, for real, 4 good games out of 20-something.
Yeah.
Would it be absurd to think that Charlie Whitehurst could have 4 good games if given that many opportunities? No, not at all. You look at it, and I really, really think the people supporting Jake, the ones that are still left, I mean, it's easy to like the guy, of course. He's a grade A person, hard worker, first one to come in, last one to leave. But I think if you take away the end of the Chargers game and the fact that it was the Chargers who we hadn't beat since we were the Oilers, if that was any other team, I think the love for him might go down a little bit. And really, what else is left besides that Jets game? That half before he was taken out. And even looking back as a former big fan of the guy, if that Jets half didn't exist, I probably never would have been as big of a fan as I was or hung out as long as I did. So really, it's one half of football out of approaching 4 full seasons now, and it's just crazy to think that people don't expect better from the position at this point.
And that's the thing. I mean, like, on a personal level, I really like Jake Locker. But if Jake Locker was a car, he'd be a lemon, you got to hop in it. and yeah, it'll get you there from time to time, but it's also going to leave you stranded over and over and over again. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man. It's kind of like, in my mind, it's kind of like the lease is coming up. We know we're not going to renew the lease, right? And we got Mettenbergers. Yeah, you got Mettenbergers sitting in the car, and we have no idea, if he's a Ferrari or a Fiat. We have no idea, but I don't think he's going to be as bad as Locker.
Look at you. Busting out these car analogies.
That 82 Gremlin, that one time on that 10-mile stretch of highway, with the windows down, the sun was setting just right. It was a pretty good ride. That's why some people are still hanging on, I guess.
Yeah. You leased an 82 Gremlin?
I might.
All right, so guys, anything else on the Bengals game? I mean, I don't even know if we need to keep it completely split into game recap and preview this week because everything's so kind of fluid. But
I just want to say this. I mean, the defense, believe it or not, I think is the least of our problems. When you get bad quarterback play, whenever you have as many penalties as lopsided as that was, and then you have the kicking game go to hell. We didn't have a chance.
Yep. We've got a number of posts about this on TitansReport.com, but yeah, I mean, with average quarterback play, we probably beat Dallas last week. With average quarterback play this week, I still think the Bengals are very talented, but it's a much closer game, and the Titans may even have a chance to win it at the end. That's not saying quarterback is their only problem, but I think it's by far the most glaring.
No matter who it is, I'll tell you what, just the fact that it's not Jake Locker and we're not getting this type of play, even if Jake Locker played like first week of Jake Locker, right. I mean, the fact that he's not playing this game, I think we actually have a chance against the Colts.
One thing before we completely move away from the game, we talked about it in the forum some, but coming out in the second half, the play calling right after the gate. Six or 7 run plays back to back to back to back to back? I mean, if that doesn't scream out loud that the coaching staff, kind of sees what's going on and knows, the writing's on the wall for whatever purposes. When you're down in a game, double-digit scores, and you come out in the second half with your quarterback and you run the ball 6 times consecutively, I mean, how much faith do they have in Locker?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
You got to think Ken Whisenhunt knows at this point.
Given the injury that was announced after the game and the fact that there do appear to be some replays from even like that first drive where Locker might have hit his hand, and maybe that's what it's stemming from, who knows. Is it out of the realm of possibility that they went into halftime and they knew coming back out that his arm, his hand wasn't right? And that's one of the reasons they limited it?
So why not put in Whitehurst
in the game?
Why not put in Whitehurst? I think that's a good question, especially as the game got crazy, like blowout towards the end. Why not take Locker out? Like, if he's already hurt, why would you keep him in the game? That injury just kind of blows my mind. I don't understand the rationale unless he didn't tell anyone until after the game. Right. Unless nobody knew. It just doesn't make sense to keep him in the game.
And it's possible. I mean, he knows his job is on the line. He knows the book on him is that he can't stay healthy.
But that would be really selfish, right?
It would be.
Think about in the Jags game, he hurt his foot and he stayed in the game, and then he had the fumble, right? On the next handoff because he couldn't even get it to the running back. So, I mean, it's not he's a guy who you might say it's selfish. Another person, if he did well, people would say he's a warrior, right?
Yep, toughness, leadership.
But I think that if you can't get the job done, it is.
There are very few athletes who can say that and admit that.
I honestly
be willing to step back.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say I honestly think that if the staff knew that his hand was an issue at that point in the game, that they wouldn't have had him out there. It sounded like everyone was surprised, coaching staff included, the next day when it came out about his hand. I mean, I know we could go back and watch the film and see where he dinged it on the helmet and that he was shaking it a couple of times, but I don't think you keep a quarterback in that circumstance. If you know he can't throw the ball, that type of game where, it's already a loss at that point, you pretty much know it. I think that they trotted him back out there just to let him try to show something. I think they were just giving him as much opportunity as they could justify giving him, even in a loss, just to see if he could put some drives together, which unfortunately he failed to do.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this, because I know that we shouldn't talk. Well, maybe we should. I don't know, but we're not going to talk about Locker for the entire episode. Let me ask you this: if I were to tell you I've been to the future, and the Titans did keep Jake Locker because he showed enough in the next 13 games, what would that enough have to look like for you? Would it have to be like 300 yards a game and 3 touchdowns? I mean, would you keep him if he looked competent for the rest of the year?
If he looked very, very good and he gave us a deal that protected us, then sure, it's not going to happen.
Compete with Mettenberger going into next year.
Yeah. I'd say at this point, not playoffs or bust, but if we manage to make the playoffs, yeah, you probably keep him. Or even if somehow we were competitive until the very end and we were in the hunt of the playoffs, one of those scenarios, X, Y, Z, team loses, you sneak in. If Locker plays well enough to get us to that point, I think it means he's probably put together, a string of 200-plus yard games, limited the interceptions, but
That's the thing, though. You'd want him to help you get there. You know what I mean? Not just get out of the way and let the team get there.
That's my take on it. So I feel like I can still imagine a scenario where 13 pretty good games, yeah, I might look at re-signing him. I might feel like he turned the corner.
Most likely 12.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But you get a couple more games into this, and then you're down to, like, if he shows quality play for 10 games, is that enough? Like, you start getting to the point where there's going to be a point where everybody's going to say there's no possible way he could show enough. And I think a lot of people are already there, but I also am not convinced everybody's completely rational when they're talking about this right now, but it's another question.
Yeah, I agree. I think I pretty much agree with what all you guys said. I mean, for starters, I think you would have to play 12 games. It's looking like he's almost certainly going to be out this week. So that puts him out week 4. And I know we talked in the offseason, well, even if he looks good, how many games would you be okay with him missing to injury? Let's say he goes ahead and misses this week, then that only gives him 12 games. So for starters, I think he has to play in all 12 of those. And kind of like you guys are saying, fringe on the playoffs or maybe into the playoffs and being actually a part of those wins, not just, a game manager, as they say, because, man, I mean, and I say all this because I'm like Josh. I don't think there's any reasonable chance that it's happened. If you were making a bet on this and taking all the evidence that you have and trying to make a projection, I don't think there's anyone who would reasonably project that this would happen. But is it possible? Yeah, it's still possible. I think it's very highly, highly improbable.
I think it's more likely that Mettenberger proves that he is more towards the end of the franchise quarterback type of quarterback than it is that Locker does enough to earn staying on another year. And like a lot of people, I like Mettenberger, as a prospect. I thought he played well during the preseason. But, it's still a big, big if he actually comes in a live game against real teams and plays that well. But I'd put the odds of him showing more as being our future quarterback than the odds of Locker being on here beyond this next season.
Simply because you've seen enough of Locker?
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, the injury bug, you can call him injury prone or say he's not injury prone. I know that's kind of a circular debate, but I mean, he's been injured every season in the pros. He's been injured in college. If you go back to his
eyes stopped working at one point in college.
Yeah. I mean, he basically missed an entire college season due to injury.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's not injury prone, I don't know a player that is. I mean, that's like 6 consecutive years of, multiple games missed per season, and he just hasn't put the good plays on the field to, feel strong about keeping him long term.
Yeah. The one thing that's causing me to hesitate as I've been I mean, apart from just, I would love for him to actually be good.
Wouldn't we all?
One of the things that I keep looking at is something you mentioned earlier, Luke, and that is he is making the right reads. Like, he's not completely lost out there.
Yeah, that's
And so then I feel like, well, if maybe his nerves need to settle, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for excuses or whatever, he certainly has some very valid ones. I mean, he's in his third different system with a completely new offensive coordinator. He has more control over the offense than he's ever had. So I mean, if you're looking for explanations or reasons, then I mean, there are some things that you can find there, because that's. I wonder often. I mean, I totally thought it was time for Mike Munchak to go, and what was it, Chris Palmer? You know, thought it was time for him to go, but that means something. You know, when you come in, he sat his rookie season, watched Hasselbeck, then he's in under Palmer, then he's gone. It was mid-season. I think we were recording a podcast when it happened. Then Loggins is in there. He's never been an offensive coordinator before. Then you got Ken Wisenhunt, who has a ton of experience, and all of a sudden he's throwing this full playbook at him. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So, but it's just, you know, unfortunately too late. You know, it's this year or bust for Jake.
Well, I said this on the forums. How many franchise quarterbacks get multiple offensive coordinators and head coaches fired? I mean, occasionally it does happen. There's a transition. There's a down year. But typically, if you have the guy, that OC goes on to become a head coach. That head coach gets a 3 or 4 year extension. You know, we can pile those on as excuses, but
there's one commonality, right?
Exactly. I mean, you hate to say the B word with quarterbacks, but it's almost hit that point.
Yeah.
This whole discussion, it's fascinating to me, because I guess let's go ahead and move on to this week, because we do have the Colts in the division. We're one game out. I mean, we're 1-2. We've had 2 very bad weeks, but we're one game out of the division lead. The Colts are also 1-2, but they're coming off a, 44-17 win over the Jags, and you know, as usual, they've been in their games, and Andrew Luck still doing his thing there. I think they are beatable, but obviously the quarterback situation is going to be huge for us, and it certainly looks like Charlie Whitehurst is going to get the start. He does still have the pinky taped up, from what we understand, that he injured during the preseason. I got to be honest, guys. I mean, we can talk about him looking decent in the preseason all we want, but I really don't know what to expect out of the guy. I mean, he certainly knows the offense, so you hope he's going to know where to go with the ball. But he's been a backup all this time for a reason. So
I mean, I will not mind at all if Whitehurst starts, but I think the preseason love he gets is a little bit overblown. I mean, he really
barely played.
Yeah, he played one preseason game, and then he took 1 or 2 snaps the next game, and he was done for the preseason because of the finger injury. And I mean, he looked okay, but you take that fluke play to Sankey, it was great. It was fun to watch. It was an awesome play. You take that one play away, and you know, he still looked. I'd consider it good, but nothing outstanding, nothing crazy. Now I know most people here aren't as excited for Charlie as they are for Zach, but I think having high expectations with Whitehurst going into this game, I think we need to temper those.
I agree. Yep, I agree. I think people are just so down on Jake, and you know, so focused on those inaccurate throws, which are completely valid, that they're kind of building Whitehurst into something that he might not be. Now, he might come in and play great. We'll see. If anyone knows his limitations, it should be Wisenhunt, obviously.
I don't think anybody's expecting Whitehurst to come in here and do anything spectacular. I just think they're hoping he comes in here and kind of holds it together and just lets this team do as best as they can, because it goes back to he's going to do better than Locker, right? The past couple of weeks at least. I think we at least understand that his floor is above that. At least we hope, right?
Yeah, we hope. I mean, hopefully it's not a Rusty Smith type start.
I don't know if you can do worse. You know, even that Rusty Smith game, I think you take the numbers off the jerseys, and you might not be able to tell Rusty from Jake the last 2 games.
So yeah, I mean, we've got a game to play against last year's division winner, and Whitehurst looks to be the guy. I know there's been some talk about hope, rather, among fans of Mettenberger maybe getting some playing time based on how things go, or if it's a blowout or whatever. But I mean, if it were me, the fan in me says I would love to see Mettenberger right now. But that would send a huge message, I think, if they went there. I mean, I think that sends the message that, yeah, we're done with Jake. And right now, everything out of the Titans camp is, Charlie's the number 2. He's the backup. He's going to play when the starter's out. And right now, Jake's still the starter. So, all of that is going according to exactly how they're saying it. But man,
you could understand that because this prevents a quarterback controversy because you know what I mean. Because he obviously he likes what he has in Mettenberger, but right now if you bring him in and if he outperforms Jake Locker, if he's really wanting to give Jake Locker another shot and Mettenberger comes in and just plays an okay game, you know what I mean, doesn't really prove himself, but still it'll make Locker look worse in comparison, even if Mettenberger doesn't have a great game. And I think that right now he is still invested in Locker.
What if Whitehurst does do the unthinkable? What if we win the game?
What if he start 300?
Week 4?
It shouldn't be unthinkable that we win this game because the Colts haven't looked good. But what if we win this game and he looks great?
Yeah, then does he start week 4?
I think at that point they'll question it. I think at this point they would say, no question, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But I think at that point you absolutely would start looking at it and they'd have to start really questioning. And I think that wouldn't fit my expectations because my thought on it has always been that Whitehurst is the fill-in if they need somebody to start while Jake is out. But once Jake is done or the season is done, then you start looking to the young guy and seeing what he has.
Yep.
I mean, I'll tell you this. So if Whitehurst does come in there and has a great game, that is afford them the luxury of letting Locker fully heal, quote unquote, next week.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Before we found out about the injury, people forget about this because they asked, immediately after the game, the reporters asked Whisenhunt, did you ever consider benching him, Jake? He basically said no, not at all, and it was only the next day that we found out about the injury. So, I mean, they're still all of the talk out of, what do they call it now, St. Thomas Sports Park? All of the talk out of there is that Jake's still the guy, and this whole idea of a quarterback controversy is really just, it's pure fans at this point. But when you look at the, I think if all of us are noticing it, and we're not experts by any means, but everyone, everywhere you read, talks about the quarterback play is what's really holding this team back right now. You have to think the coaches are seeing that behind the scenes. And maybe they just keep hoping Jake's going to come around.
It's not just fan-created at this point. The fact that the media members are asking questions about it, I mean, we've all seen this play out dozens of times over the years, and statistically speaking, it doesn't end well for Jake Locker now that these questions are being asked. Once the media takes a hold of a QB controversy, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. If Whitehurst plays well, or if somehow Zach finds himself in a game and he plays remotely well, the questions will keep coming harder and harder. If Locker recovers from his injury and comes back in the games, if he has another stinker or two, they're only going to come with harder and harder questions.
Go ahead, Luke.
Oh, basically at this point, Locker has to get healthy, and he has to come in, and he has to ball out for 2 or 3 games, really, to have any chance of saving his job, and I just don't think it can happen.
And there's one thing I kind of want to point out. I've heard in a couple places that these are people who are just Zach Mettenberger fans. That's not the case. I didn't give a crap about Zach Mettenberger for the Titan. I mean, he was the booger eater. You know what I mean? I could care less about the guy. But now that he's here, and we've seen Jake Locker now for parts of 4 years, and I think we may not know if Mettenberger's the guy. We feel pretty confident Jake Locker isn't. We feel pretty confident Whitehurst isn't. And Mettenberger has given us reason to think that maybe he could be. We just want to see him at some point. Once it gets to the point where we know for sure it's not Locker. And I think we're really close, if not already there.
Yeah, that one throw Mettenberger had in preseason that everyone links the GIFs of, to where he hit Hunter on the long touchdown, where the defender tripped, and if he didn't fall down, who knows what happens there. But just that one throw, he steps up in the pocket, defender's in his face, delivers a strike, leads Hunter in stride, we score. That is something that even the biggest Jake Locker fans are struggling to find that type of play in, his arsenal. And you can stretch some plays and say, look, he navigated okay here and there. But that was beautiful, that one play from Mettenberger. And just that one play, you don't want to overblow it too much. But if he's capable of doing that, it's going to be something the Titans haven't had in a while. I think that's why people are excited. Like you, I kind of followed him in college, wrote him off a little bit around combine time due to the injury and everything. I knew that he had a good year at LSU with Cam Cameron, and draft time came up and he kept slipping and slipping and slipping. And when we picked him when we did, I was very excited about the pick. It was great value. But I still wasn't expecting much. But then he came in the preseason, and he had some mistakes. He didn't play perfectly. And I know kind of almost every quarterback had a great preseason this year, but the little things that he did.
He had the best, but he had the best.
Yeah, his mobility in the pocket, the fact that he's willing to take strikes down the field. Look for those, the people he was playing with were no-name receivers, and, they were going up and making plays, beating coverage. And Locker, at this point, it looks like Locker has to see the open man to make a play, whereas Mettenberger was creating the play.
Dude, Locker has always been that guy. Ask Kendall Wright. You guys see that? Kendall Wright?
Yeah. That quote, give it to us.
Yeah, well, I don't have it memorized, but basically he was asked, and it's sitting right out there on TitansOnline.com. It's his after Wednesday practice report interview. And they asked him, so what's the difference between Whitehurst and Locker? Does Whitehurst throw a different ball? And he said, oh, yeah, Whitehurst throws with anticipation. It's like, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that even Bill Ott, who's super horn on MusicCityMiracles.com and also posts on TitansReport.com, when he's done Jake Locker reviews, I think he's indicated, Jake Locker's kind of a see-it-throw-it quarterback. But you didn't... I mean, just hearing a wide receiver say that, like, especially on top of all the other evidence, it's like, this is not something that somebody should be saying about your quarterback. What's the difference between this career backup and your starter? Oh, the career backup can anticipate things. And I think it's the same throw from Zach Mettenberger in the preseason. But Greg Cosell, when he was talking about it, he said, if you pause it when he throws the ball, Justin Hunter isn't open.
Yeah.
I don't know. You also said that everyone had a good preseason. Everyone's having a great regular season. This is the highest completion percentage in the NFL after 3 games ever.
Yeah.
And Jake Locker's completion percentage is, what, like 50-something? 56.4. And the NFL average this year is like 63, 64%. I mean, Locker last year was barely over 60, and we were cheering that.
I think a big solace a lot of us took over the last couple of years were, they were drafted in the same year, just a couple of picks apart, Blaine Gabbert. And a lot of what a lot of us did was, Locker's maybe not great, but he's not Blaine Gabbert bad. This season, he's worse than what Blaine Gabbert looked. And like you said, I didn't know the actual numbers on it, but it looks like every passer this year has been going out there and just, balling out. But Locker is having career worse games for himself, and, compared to the rest of the league, it's just atrocious.
If you were being 100% honest with yourself and someone said, look at all the other quarterbacks in the league, and you try to find quarterbacks worse, or at least playing worse than Locker right now. If you're being honest with yourself, I don't know if you can come up with maybe McCown in Tampa, and
who's
maybe
conveniently been benched already.
Right, maybe one other guy. But I mean, it's just bad no matter how you slice it. Right,
Jake Locker is the 42nd rated passer in the NFL so far this year.
42nd.
42nd.
Folks,
yeah.
there are only 32 NFL teams.
Yeah. Although, let me tell you this, number 43, as you mentioned before, is Josh McCown. So.
Well, don't you feel better already?
No. No, I don't.
The other angle to this that sort of I'm just very intrigued by, because since Whisenhunt was hired, one of the things he said he learned from Arizona was to be patient with the quarterback position. And he even reminded reporters of that after, this is what I was going to say earlier, and I lost my train of thought, so I just kept it rolling with something. But after he met with reporters post-game Cincinnati, he reminded them of that, that he had said, one of the lessons I learned is to be patient with the quarterback position. That was when they were asking him about benching Jake. And man, I don't know how that makes me feel, because at this, there comes a point when the common sense of a coach just has to override that, and he has to realize that patience isn't necessarily what you need anymore. And maybe it's not this point yet. I don't know. He's the coach. He's been a coach for a long time, and he knows certainly better than I do. But I don't know. How does that make you guys feel that he's just continuing? I mean, I appreciate the methodical approach of being patient, but we fans are saying, well, we've been patient with him for 4 years now.
I think everyone's afraid because he did that in Arizona that, because he got fired, that he's going to do the exact opposite of that now. I don't think that. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's an NFL coach. He's won a Super Bowl with the Steelers. He went to another one out at Arizona. I don't think he's going to do that. I think, honestly, he knows he has this year. No matter what happens, there's no reason to rush anything. Mettenberger, they let him play during the preseason, but you could tell his knee's not 100%.
That's where it is. I think they want to get away from the injury.
Yeah, if you look at Sam Bradford, they got injured comparable time frames. I think Bradford's happened about a month before Mettenberger's, and they had same surgery. Both rehabilitated really, really well. Bradford goes out there right around a month ago, almost to the day, re-injures himself. And granted, it was probably a fluke that Bradford had it happen again, but I think they're going to be watching that knee of Mettenberger. They're not going to rush anything. If they see him as having even that potential as a franchise quarterback, there's no reason to rush it. Starting 3 or 4 games this season is probably going to be just as good as starting 5 or 6, and you don't run that risk as much. Let him rest it up, let him come out 100% instead of 94 or 95% healthy. So I think Whisenhunt's just really buying himself some time just to. Maybe Locker can turn it back on. Maybe Whitehurst will go out and, turn into Tom Brady. It's crazy. Mathematically, it's not going to happen, but he knows he has time.
Yeah. So you would feel comfortable with starting Mettenberger maybe 2 or 3 games near the end, or maybe none at all. Do you think, Luke, that they would, I guess, be able to see enough in practice and from the past preseason to feel comfortable that they don't have to be looking for a quarterback in round 1? Because that's kind of been my fear, is that they would go into the offseason with more uncertainty at the quarterback position. And, I strongly believe that they forced that pick with Jake, at number 8 years ago. So I would hope they wouldn't do that again. Obviously, it's a new coach, but.
If Mettenberger starts 0 games, I don't know that I'd be confident in that. But, I mean, you see tons of quarterbacks, undrafted, worked their way up the depth chart. They come in as, practice squad guys. They work their way up to the number 3, then the number 2, and whatever. I think the coaches can tell a ton through practice and the preseason. And if Mettenberger were to get 1 or 2 starts, I think they'd have a pretty good idea at that point. It doesn't have to be necessarily any starts to know whether he has it or not, but I think if they got just a few game sample size, they'd feel a lot more comfortable making a decision, whether it's, he's not the guy, we need to draft somebody, or, he's doing some things right, we need to iron this out, but there's no reason to waste a first on another a Mariota or a Hundley or whoever the choice might be.
I feel like they are better off letting the Jake Locker experiment really truly run its course. And I think that, if you had asked me preseason how many games would it take for them to bench Jake Locker, I would have said, he'll get at least half the season.
Yeah.
We're 3 games in, and the last 2 games have been so frustrating that I think a lot of people are ready to move on. But I think that you're better off being absolutely certain and almost like forcing Jake to show you he can't get it done. And then at that point, you move on, and even if the other guys are bad, nobody's kind of questioning should they go back to Jake.
Yeah. And this injury, I mean, it's kind of a, you hate to say it, but it gives Wiz a free pass to, let Whitehurst go out there and, well, is this really the problem? Is it really the quarterback? And if he comes out and plays very well, then it gets interesting. If he comes out and plays mediocre or even bad, then it's easy to go back to Jake. But it's fascinating. Like I said, for a 1-2 team, there are just so many interesting angles and topics of discussion around this team right now. Maybe even, aside from the Locker injury, we've also got 2 injuries to the tight ends. Delaney Walker, who's just had a phenomenal season through 3 games, really been probably our biggest weapon on offense so far. He's been battling an injury. I think he was limited on Thursday in practice. And Taylor Thompson, I don't believe, has practiced at all. So that's another issue to watch heading into this game against Indy. But we'll go ahead and, man, this episode has flown by. It's already time to get our picks in. Is anyone going to be bold enough to pick the Titans this week?
Well, I was bold enough to pick both teams last week, so I don't see why I can't pick the Titans again.
That was a smart bet, by the way. I like the 2-team pick.
He nailed it. I mean, what more can you say? I'll start off. I don't think the Titans win this game until they beat the Colts with Andrew Luck. I'm refusing to pick them because it's mind-boggling to me. I feel like a broken record. We say it every year. The Colts aren't that good. The Colts aren't that good. Guess what? They're not that good this year, but they somehow find a way to be in games and to win games and to, for lack of a better word, I mean, they have so much luck. And until that runs out, I have to see that. Until I see it happen at least once, I just can't pick the Titans. Uncertainty at the quarterback position. I think Whitehurst will be pretty rusty, and I don't think we'll win the game. But I would love to be wrong. Let's go to Jamal.
Yeah, so I think that I've picked the Titans in every Colts matchup for a while now, and the reason is because the Colts aren't good. Yeah, and then we play them, and we play them so close, and they barely win.
Yep.
And so for me, I have no problem taking the Titans. I don't think it's a crazy pick at all. But I do think, and this is something that some people hate, but I do think there is such a thing as moxie, as a quality that some people have where they play better in the clutch. And I think the Colts have that in Andrew Luck, and the Colts have that just in general. There's like a team mindset that seems to rise above, and it drives me nuts. But again, I honestly think the Titans have been very close on a number of plays that would have changed the game. I think even last week, kick a couple field goals, don't hold in the end zone and give up a safety. And we're in that game against Cincinnati, who I think is far superior to Indianapolis at this point. And so I think this is very much a winnable game. And I like to think that if Whitehurst can be a game manager, that will be a big difference from the last 2 games.
Does anybody know what our record is the last 5 games against the Colts?
0-5.
0-5 probably.
0-5, and we've lost 10 out of the last 11 to the Colts, and we didn't always have the worst team. But that has nothing to do with this. I just thought that was interesting. But I don't know. I kind of want to go with you, Jamal, on that, but I fully expect Whitehurst to come out and like John Boy said to be lucky. It's not the same when you're going against second stringers in preseason.
Be rusty, you mean?
Yeah, to come out and be rusty. Yeah, to be rusty. Yeah, there you go. Rusty.
Yeah,
nice
rusty.
Nice little Titans pun there. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's. I think that we get in this game, we stay in it pretty early, but I think that the Colts pull away late, and I think they win.
All right, Luke.
Gotta go Colts. Well, I mean, our defense has kind of been a surprise this year, but they're not good enough to win games by themselves. And our offense, as nice as it looks when it's drawn up and we see the plays that are on the field, we just haven't executed like we should. And I have no faith that Whitehurst can come in and, make it look like the greatest show on turf. So just because of that, Whitehurst doesn't have any starts. Our defense, while serviceable, I don't think they're going to get us, 3 pick sixes and a fumble recovery at their 5-yard line. I'm going to have to go with the Colts. They've had our number for too many years. We play them close, we play them well, but those are divisional games. They tend to always be pretty close, but the better team tends to win. And they may not be the better overall team, but they've got the quarterback. We don't.
That's right.
The good news is that sort of mythical 4 weeks to learn the defense is almost up. So after this game, the defense is going to be great.
85 Bears, here we come.
Here we come.
Well, that's a wrap, folks. Episode 82 of the Two-Tone Crew in the books. We'll be back next week, of course, to discuss the game. As I always say, hopefully a win, but we'll see how it plays out. What would you guys do if Locker actually played?
I kind of have a sneaking suspicion that they always say they're gonna. Well, we'll see later in the week how he does. I have a sneaking suspicion that they wouldn't mind him playing. That he's not truly ruled out yet. I would be personally, I'd be angry if they went with Locker because he hasn't practiced. It's like he's not good enough to not practice and then play.
Yeah.
If Locker played, I would immediately, come game time, run to TitansReport.com's chat room and watch the hilarity ensue. I'll leave it at that.
That is spot on right there. All right, Josh, you haven't been here in a while, but I'll let you close us out here if you can pull up all the links where people can. Man, we're doing a live show. We didn't even take any Twitter questions. I apologize. We just had such a great discussion going. I think it's already been over an hour, but normally when we do these live shows, we try to take some questions. So hopefully we won't have as many topics next week, and we'll be able to do
we
that.
had one topic this week. One topic.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't see any way that Jake Locker plays, but just simply because if he plays, we're not going to carry 3 quarterbacks into the game, right? It's going to be so I don't know. For some reason, I don't see that as a possibility, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, okay, so you can find us on TitansReport.com. We're the official podcast of Titans Report. You can find us on iTunes. Just search for the Two-Tone Crew. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Titans Report. Of course, on Twitter @Titans Report. You can send us an email to the mailbag @twotonecrew.com, and the voicemail line is 615-900-0282.
Head over and give us some iTunes reviews as well. We when we first started this, we got a whole bunch of reviews and haven't gotten any in a while. So head on over there, leave us a review. Always appreciate the feedback, and we will talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend.